Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Paul Varacchi, and this is the Fights with Friends podcast with my co-host.
Steven Koepfer. You can call me Steve. Yeah, we are both stuntmen and we're filmmakers. And here we are to talk to another awesome person.
We are here with another episode of Fights with Friends.
It's not just another episode. It is literally the halfway point of our season 1.
Season 1. That means we are at episode 13?
Yes.
13.
14 if you count the pilot.
Ooh.
Yeah. But we are literally at the halfway point.
We're cooking, baby.
And what better way to celebrate this milestone than Batman?
With not
Harley
only that, but not just Batman. I know you're all excited, but animated Batman.
Animated Batman, Harley Quinn, all the good Batman IP stuff.
I mean, I had no idea what went into an animated fight scene. It is insane.
Dude, just animation at all. I'm like, when you guys hear this interview with Andy Young, who was on the editing team for Harley Quinn and the main editor for Merry Little Batman on Amazon, which is actually really fucking good. You guys should watch it. He was amazing for breaking down like this complicated process. It was like really crazy.
When he talked, I was like, imagine someone telling you to do a previs 200 times.
Yeah. Shooting a previs while you're shooting another previs, while you're still shooting yet another previs.
That's basically what it sounds like he does.
Yeah. Totally. And each one with a different voice actor, and each one, it's crazy.
Yeah.
With a different color palette, maybe.
And the order you think that this would be done in is not, it's not.
Yeah.
Everything, the way that it's all edited, to me, it all was backwards to what I thought I was going to hear him say.
What did he say? Like 10 months about for a
22-minute episode. 10 months.
That's insane. Sipping
and
my
they
beer.
Don't even get to see it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like 10 months of pieces before it's a whole.
Totally, man.
That's crazy.
And he was awesome.
Yeah, he was a great guest. And I mean, if you guys are wondering in any, like, he gives us so much information on the editing process, the designing of the fight process, to the artists, to the sound, the order of when it's shot. I mean, this was a really great I'm never going to watch a cartoon the same way ever again.
No, me either. And what's cool is that he is also a live action animator. So, I mean, editor. So he really could break down like conceptually how they're the same, but practically how they're different.
And also you're going to find out if you are one of those, more old school stunt guys or whatever, or old school people, you're like, fuck cartoons, whatever. I'm telling you, this cartoon is made for the old school. If you loved the original Batman, if you watch regular movies, if you just like adult humor, this is Harley Quinn is definitely the cartoon for you. I mean, it is adult humor all the way. They swear. It's
Adam West definitely would have loved.
Absolutely. And there's so many homages to all of the other Batmans. They make fun of Tom Hardy as Batman, as Bane's voice. I mean, you guys, like, any adult that likes to laugh and that has any love for Batman at all, needs to watch the series.
Dude, I hadn't watched the show at all until we booked Andy, and then I went and watched it, and it was hysterical. It's hysterical. Like he said, it's like Arrested Development put into a Batman animation. And it's all with adult humor.
The first time I heard fuck, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's so good. It's so good. Speaking of so good, we have some people to mention. Which one do we do first? I think we need to mention, as you all know, this is a video podcast and also an audio podcast. But we're on YouTube, and we've crossed we took the summer off for the people listening to this. Like, so we're recording this in the first week of September. We took all of August off because we had so many in the can. They're batched up and ready to go. And during that time, we hit 100 subscribers on our YouTube channel.
Kristen.
No, not Kristen.
It's not Kristen?
No.
Oh, no, she's our first.
She is on Patreon.
She's our first. That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to screw that up.
No, sorry, Vincent Lane.
Sorry, Vincent.
No, but we love you, Vincent.
Vincent, you were our 100th subscriber. I didn't mean to steal your spotlight, dude. You fucking man.
Boy, Paul, you really suck.
Fucked it up,
you
dude.
fucked it up and Vincent's here in New York. We know Vincent. So
don't come and beat me up, Vincent.
But Vincent, thank you. Seriously, thank you so much for being. We're well past 100 now, but you were number 100,
dude. You know what? And because of that, you know what, Vincent, reach out to us. Send me your address. I'll send you something special for being number 100.
There you
I
go.
got a couple extra things in my collection. I'll send you to make you smile, dude. Yeah, for sure.
But for the people that subscribe at $20 on Patreon, they also get there's some cool perks there. They get some special stuff, and that is Kristen Murphy, our first $20 Patreon subscriber.
She's the best. I love Kristen. She's one of our.
We love all the other Patreon subscribers, even if you're paying $1.
Well,
we love all of you.
I mean, like, because we personally know Kristen. Like,
yeah,
we love Kristen as in she's our friend. We love her. We train with her. She comes to the gym all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I would say she's one of us.
Yeah, totally.
You know, for sure.
Yo, so what did we do this August? We usually start by saying what you've been up to. What you've been up to.
This August, you know, I haven't been doing too much. I did that interview for my buddy, the I Am Iron Fist, you know, so that was kind of cool.
We taught a workshop.
We
did do a
really fun, man.
A Breakfall Studios workshop, which we hadn't done in quite a while because it's been just a crazy year.
We haven't, and I thought we had a good take. Between the Punches.
That's the name of the workshop. Yep, Between the Punches.
It was a good workshop. It was a different workshop. I think we worked on different things. It wasn't so much a workshop oriented on showing you cool shit and having you do cool things. I felt like there was a lot more things to take home.
Yeah, I mean, so for the listener, we've done many fight choreography, fight skill workshops
where we show sambo moves and Krav Maga moves and really train a specific move.
one was designed for people who had a baseline in fight skills, and we really focused on story development within a fight scene, and it was pretty awesome.
We broke it down. We threw a lot of curveballs at them. We made them feel comfortable, and then we brought them out of that comfort zone, and it's cool.
So if you're out there and you're in the biz and you want a workshop from us at Breakfall Studios, definitely hit us up. And while you hit us up, you can also ask to be on our mailing list. Our email is fightingwithfriendspod@gmail.com.
That's right.
Yeah. Fighting, not fight. So Fighting with Friends.
So not only do we have workshops coming up, we have film festivals coming up, dude.
Yeah, man. So earlier this year, I sat on a stunt panel at the Art of Movie Making Film Festival, which was its third year, and it's a really unique festival because they focus on the creatives. They don't do best picture, best actor, any of that. They're focusing on all the crafts, right? The best costume design, best set, best animation, Andy, right? Best prop, best stunt performance, lots of other crafts that never get recognized in the main film festivals. And it was a really great startup festival. And so we're jumping on to sponsor the 4th installment of that festival. And what we're going to do is have the winner of the best stunt performance on the show.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you are out there and you are a filmmaker or a stunt performer that was in a film that you want to submit to this festival, you can hit up Film Freeway. The link will be in the show notes. And when do you have to? You have until June 20. Oh no, the festival is June 21st and 22nd next year, 2025. So we'll have the link. If you have something you want to submit. And if you win, you can be here with us.
That's right.
It's pretty cool.
But you know what?
What?
We're not done.
We're not
done.
Why?
We got more things coming.
More stuff to talk about?
We got more things coming. We have a film screening coming up, dude.
Oh, yeah. Our first live event.
That's right.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Dude, Preston Thomas. He's a filmmaker and a grappler and a martial artist. And he did a documentary on martial arts in the film business, like the crossover between martial arts and film, specifically grappling. So all you grapplers out there are going to love this documentary.
Yes.
And
especially if you love the show, because we have a couple people that have been on the show that are in the documentary.
The film. Yeah. And it's a really cool film. And so we're doing an advanced screening here in New York on, when are we doing it? On February 8th next year. So all our Patreon subscribers, regardless of what level you're at, you will get a free ticket to come to this. And I think it's going to be exciting. Preston is going to be on the show in a few weeks. So we'll get to hear more in detail about his process making this movie, because I think he started out making the movie wanting to just do sort of a objective view, and as he started talking to people, little of it became more of his own personal journey as a martial artist and filmmaker. Yeah. It stopped becoming a objective view, but more is this where I'm headed? How, like kind of like am I looking into the crystal ball type thing? It was really good. So yeah, our first live event, it's going to be here in Brooklyn at Stewart Cinemas, and we'll have eventually ticket sales information up, but all our Patreon folks are going to get a free ticket.
Yep, that's right.
So if you don't support us on Patreon,
yeah, please do, and you get a free ticket to this.
You should start.
That's right.
Yeah, totally, man.
Right.
There'll be an after party. It'll be fun.
And none of this would be possible without our sponsors, man.
Yeah, man.
That's it. Metro Camera Car, Joe Burris.
Yep, Metro Camera Cars. We just love you, dude. How many more episodes do we say this? We love you, Joe.
Joe, we love you.
Every episode, we talk about how fucking great you are.
Yep.
And how great Metro Camera Cars are. Is Metro Camera Cars I think is the proper. Because they're okay, so it's
that's just the end of it. Metro Camera Cars is
you fill in the blank. But right, the name is plural, but the entity is singular, so it's
right.
Kind of
it's not
like,
Metro Camera Car.
Yeah,
it's cars.
Metro Camera Cars is awesome.
They are.
So if you need to shoot anything with a car in your production, inside a car, outside a car, following a car, towing a car, you name it, they
probably
do it.
On top of a car.
Yeah, totally. They're awesome. Cool. Stunt Contact.
Stunt Contact, the who of the who. What is it? What am I trying to say?
The who's who.
That's what I'm talking about. The who's who of where the fuck is this shooting?
Yeah, totally. Stunt Contact. Great website, amazing database. Gives you a ton of information. Like, when you find out about, okay, well, this production is shooting here. Okay. Oh, who's involved? I got to jump on IMDb Pro. Oh, I got to search on Deadline to see who's working on this. Oh, I got to do my Google searches, find out who.
Oh, let me call this guy. Let me call that guy. You can get it all from Stunt Contact.
That's all collated onto the page for that production. The IMDb Pro links.
Any accessible emails that you would need. Anything that's out there is on Stunt Contact. Yeah. They have it. They track it down and they put it all in one place for you.
And what's really cool is I got to meet Noelle Kim, who owns and runs.
That's right. You had lunch with her last week,
I just had lunch with her because she was here in New York. It's the first time we met in person. Very cool woman. Very cool woman. A lot of great stories. We're going to try and do a sponsor spotlight segment on the show where we do like a quick, 15 or 20-minute interview with our sponsors to let them chime in and.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you guys out there can get to know why we love them so much.
Right.
That we're not just blowing smoke up your butts. Paul likes to do that sometimes.
Dude, only on Tuesday, and it's got to be after 8.
There you go. After a few more episodes and beers, right? So what about Brett Copes, man? Fight or Flight Entertainment.
Fight or Flight Entertainment, man. If you want to learn how to fly, get pulled, get dragged.
Yeah, man.
Brett's the man.
He's the best. And just take one of his workshops, please. We're always reposting his stuff on social media wherever he's teaching around the country. If you need a primer on flying performers, his workshops are the ones to go to. There's a lot of great riggers out there. There's not a lot of great riggers out there teaching, right? So this guy is putting it out there too. He's just great. He's really great.
And, if you don't know, like basic things, if you don't know knots, if you don't know this, if you don't know that, his workshops are great for that. And, when you show up on set, if you're going to get pulled, if you're going to do rigging, it's always nice to know, your basic knots.
Yep, totally. Or not.
Yeah,
and Tactical Black.
Tactical Black, my favorite.
Yeah.
Running and gunning.
That's it, man.
Safely.
If you're a performer, you need to know how to look like you're handling a weapon properly.
Yep.
Or if you want to actually learn how to handle a weapon properly.
That's right. Just like fighting.
Yeah.
The audience can tell if you don't know how to handle a weapon, just like they can tell you if you don't know how to punch.
They'll get you out on the shoot house. They'll get you out on the range if you want to do the actual firearm education. Or they have workshops with the trainers.
Yep.
For the people who are not interested in actually shooting guns
and moving properly with them.
Yep. They're great, man. They're great. These sponsors helped us make it to this episode 13, the halfway mark.
They helped us make it to episode 2.
to episode 1. None of it would have happened without them. Right? So, guys, gals, everyone, you guys are awesome. All our sponsors.
All of our sponsors, everybody that gives us a follow, a like, and a subscribe on all of our platforms.
Yeah, man.
We appreciate all of you. And the more likes and subscribes that we get, the better it is for us. The more we pop up on people's algorithms, and then more people will get to watch and get all this awesome information about how awesome our industry is, especially the stunt part.
Yeah, man. Look, you can throw us a review if you're on Apple, but YouTube, for example, doesn't have reviews, but you can comment. We can actually directly comment with you.
Mm-hmm.
That would be awesome. Throw us some comments, man. And people have been commenting.
Oh, and please, we've got an episode coming up where we're going to answer your questions live on the air. So if you have any questions, you have anything about the industry that you'd like to know, guys, please ask and let us know, and we'll respond, on air.
On that episode or any episode. I mean, we have pinned at the top of our Instagram the mailbag post. So you can just comment on it or send us a message. If you have a question, we'll answer it.
And any other fun stuff that we're doing on the side, you can come check out the Breakfall Studios on Instagram and see all the fun that us and the rest of our stunt training buddies are having as well.
Yeah, totally, man.
Boom.
I think that's it.
That is it.
We need to get to Andy.
We do.
He's out there waiting.
We do. Andy, we're coming. Dude, I got so many fucking questions for this guy.
Yeah, me too.
This is going to be so awesome.
All right, man. Let's do it.
Sweet.
Hey, oh my God. Thank you so much, Andy, for coming on the show.
My pleasure, man. Thanks so much for having me. Cheers.
Dude, Paul and I, at some point when we started this, we were like, we have to do
an animated fight. I've never seen an interview on someone going through what it takes to make an animated fight.
Weirdly,
and then
I haven't either. That's why I wanted to do this.
Oh, it's so awesome. And then we were like, we need an editor.
Yep. So what's better? We what's it? 2 birds, 1 stone?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I appreciate it, but I feel very dorky of just you guys had all these cool stunt coordinators and fighters. It's you guys love Dave Grohl. Here's his accountant. We usually don't get interviewed about cool stuff, so I'm very honored to be asked. But I looked at some of the other guests and I was like, oh my God, those guys beat me up in high school.
If he has a good accountant, though, we should.
I want to know where that Nevermind money's going.
Yeah, totally.
But
dude.
Actually, I feel like we are kind of nerded out the same way as you have with us, the other way around, because we're kind of freaking out about this because, I mean, first of all, Steve and I have been watching cartoons, obviously, since we were kids. Because,
dude, let me just say this. I said to my wife, Chris, I got to watch Merry Little Batman. Do you want me to watch it without you, or do you want to? She goes, "Are you kidding me? Cartoons? I'm watching it." Mm-hmm. She freaking loved it. She loved it. It was so good.
My wife was even walking through the room and stopping to watch Harley Quinn.
That's the highest praise I can get. It's either kids kind of starting to watch, or wives walking in being like, oh.
She's she would recognize the voices because she loves Veep, and there's a bunch of characters from Veep in there.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, oh, is this blah blah blah? And I'm like, yep. And
Total Murderous Row, all the best comedians and stuff. It really is
moly, it really is
incredible. It's like Arrested Development level, and again, a lot of Arrested Development people.
Really cool because it fits the tone of the show. It's so. Steve brought it up to me because he watched it before I did.
I had never watched it before, so I was fucking hysterical laughing.
But I watched, Batman Beyond and all of the other Batman cartoons, series, which have 100%. A very, very serious tone to them.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of like the Mary Tyler Moore show, but with boobs and sex and violence and stuff.
Well,
I think that's how Justin pitched it to me.
I told Steve, I go, this is which is why I have this shirt on. I go, this is like an adult Saturday morning cartoon.
Yes. Exactly. I remember I found my buddy Colin, who's also a big Batman fan. He recommended the show to me during COVID, and I was like, I don't know, another superhero show. I'm over it. And then I started watching it, and September 2020 was the perfect time, and it was just the comedy was so sharp and Arrested Development. Mm-hmm. The violence was amazing. The fighting was amazing, and it's funny. I had always wanted to work in animation. I was just a fan, but then 6 months later, it was my big break, and I got on the show. It's still kind of surreal to me that I was I jumped on my couch when that big thing happened in season 2, and then it's I get to do what happens in season 3. It was very surreal. It was such a fun show to work on. I'm adult Saturday morning show. It's a great way to pitch it.
So how did that happen? So I mean, it's very cool to be a fan of something and get to work on it. How did that happen? How did you get the gig?
Yeah, well, so I moved to LA in 2016, and I had been doing a lot of
And you were from New Orleans?
Oh, so I'm from New Orleans, but then
Yeah.
I grew up in Houston, specifically Sugar Land, Texas. Went to
Oh, wow.
film school in Austin, and then made my way out here. So that was the 1, 2, 3, 4 move. And then like I was doing like I always branded myself a comedy editor. Like I just wanted to work in comedy, and like I was a big fan of animation. I didn't see there was a path to it though. Like I always assumed it was that catch-22. Like you have to have made animation to do animation. So I did a lot of live action. Shout out the Just Shoot It Boys from Your Hat. Like I did a
There
ton
we
of
go.
shit with them. And
Just a
then
sidebar. Just
yeah,
Shoot It podcast, who we love, gave us a plug when we started our podcast,
that's how I found you guys. Yeah.
and that's how you found it. You started
Oh, nice.
following us,
Mm-hmm.
and then I found out you Matt Enlow's film that he produced. You edited that film.
Yep, that's exactly what I was gonna say, because that was
Yeah.
my first, ironically, another Christmas movie. But that was so 2020 was really weird, obviously, right? Like I had like booked my first like TV show as an editor, but then it fell through because of COVID. And then I booked my first feature, and me and Matt's wife Chrissy were ready to just edit in person. That obviously didn't happen. They wrapped our wrap party was literally a week before everything shut down. So I basically spent 2020 just editing an indie film for no money, doing little scrappy things here and there. But something weird happened around that time. Animation was really booming, and all of a sudden I was getting not offers but interviews for shows like Big Mouth, Solar Opposites, Tuca Birdie, like things that were like adult animated, like comedy shows, because they weren't looking for animated editors because they were weirdly all booked, but they were looking for comedy editors. And so in January, my mentor Neil, rest in peace, sadly passed away, and I spent a week on Zooms, like crying with other editors and stuff. And one of whom, Al Levine, was like, Andy, I'm going to get you a TV show. Like, God is my witness. You're ready. Neil was going to get you one. I'm going to get you one. And, you know, we're all grieving. And I was like, that's really nice of you. We'll see what happens. Literally 4 days later, I get a call from the head of Warner Brothers Post that's like, hey, you were highly recommended by Al and this guy, James. I usually wouldn't consider you, but they really recommended you. Would you be interested in interviewing for the show called the Harley Quinn animated series? And I was freaking out. Like, I was like, this is my favorite show. Like, of course, like I'll do it. So I did like 3 interviews, and I kept thinking like, okay, this is the one where they're going to let me go. I don't have the experience, or I'm too like weird as a fan or whatever. And I was, as far as I know, the first person hired onto season 3. So you truly never know where your big break is going to come from. And I had never cut a fight scene before. This show was my first time, but it was, I don't know. It was a great experience. And it was the kind of thing of just like, I was a fan like you guys. Like I grew up watching cartoons, and it's always in my editing whenever I am doing something I've never done before. I'm like, okay, well, I've watched this a lot, so I just need to do kind of my version of like imagining my mind's eye. My brother and I are sitting on the couch Saturday morning. What does this look like? Maybe not for Harley because that's a little adult, but it is like that's kind of the mind's eye thing of like, how does a fight scene look in my head, and then trying to translate that to animation. So that's kind of the TLDR of how I booked Harley.
To bring it back, just to say, you mentioned you were a comedy editor.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So what is a comedy editor?
Yeah.
And what other kinds of editors are there involved with this whole process?
That's a great question. So when I moved, I called myself, I don't know if like comedy editor is like a title per se, but like when I moved to LA, I knew like the Just Shoot It guys. I knew a couple other people here and there, and I knew I wanted to work in comedy, but like putting like Andy Young editor on the resume on the website wasn't getting me anywhere. So I was like, well, I only want to cut comedy. If I just like change my head of my resume from editor to comedy editor, I'm going to lose a lot of jobs, but I'm also going to gain more than I probably wouldn't have. And that's exactly what happened, because I pigeonholed myself. All of a sudden my resume, like I wouldn't get certain jobs that I didn't want anyways, but it was shooting up in like places like College Humor and Soul Pancake and Cracked and like places like that. So I kind of like just by default called myself that. And then as for other people that work on it, it's really a small department, even for a show as big as Harley. Like Warner Brothers has a weird thing where we didn't have assistant editors, so it really was the whole post team was me and my co-editor Dave Quarter, who did animatics with me, and then Charles Briner, really talented editor, came back and replaced me on Harley when I had to go do Merry Little Batman. So it's really like the post team actually is very small, even on like a studio project. Even on like the TV show I'm doing right now, it's like me, a co-editor, and a associate editor, which is basically an assistant editor, but they can also help build like sound effects and boards and stuff. So it's a really small group. Even when I was doing like comedy stuff, like usually like when I would do stuff for Matt and Oren, it like is just me. So I was very used to being able to like be versatile and working fast and stuff like that.
That's cool, man. So like with this, but so just, you know, having done my homework a little bit, I watched your class, and then even with the and we'll link that to the show notes, by the way. That was
Yeah, it was for
super.
LacPug, the Adobe thing, right?
Yeah,
How to
yeah, the Adobe thing. It was really awesome.
Thanks.
But so there's so many layers of that has to, there's the storyboard layer, then like animatics, and then color, and then this, and then still, even with the small crew that you have, are you recycling those roles, or do you have assigned
Oh,
roles?
interesting. Kind of. I think I see what you're saying. It's like, yeah, so basically like I'll take you through like the run of like Merry Little Batman's a good example. Just like from script to screen, as it were, for animated movies. I think I say this in the thing, but it's like when you think of live action, it's like you write something, you shoot something, you edit something. It's very linear.
Right.
Animation, it's cyclical. It's like writing and filming or animating are happening around you constantly, and you're kind of like the nucleus hub of the project. So basically I would get storyboards from a board artist after they pitched it to the director, and then I would cut that together with like temporary voices, usually me or my producer, temporary sound effects, temporary music to kind of best sell a scene. And then we would like, or they would rewrite it constantly. And then we would eventually land like a year later at like the final boards. We send that off to our animators, and then they would start to send us. I thought like when I was in animation, it's like, oh, you send the boards and then you just get brand spanking finished animation. Not how it works. You get like a rough pass that's like, oh, the characters are kind of cleaned up. You get like the rough animation, which is like, okay, this is like the movements they're going to be doing. You get like the cleanup, the special effects that are in there, the flat color pass before lighting, and then you get your final one, and all of those have various stages. So even I think in that class I showed like a very simple shot of like the cat running, and that had like
Right.
13 versions over 2 years before we got the finished shot. And that's a very simple shot,
Right.
not like an animated fight is a perfect example of something like where there's like so many versions and so much restaging and so many different like ways of cutting something. Like when people ask me like, why does animation take like 3 to 5 years? A lot of it is all of these processes take a certain amount of time, but it's also like when you juxtapose images together, which is our job as an editor, sometimes this doesn't fit next to that and you have to like open things back up. Or one of my favorite things, even when I've cut live action fighting, is like, I'm sure you guys have done this too, where it's like if you have like a punch going across, you cut out like a frame of it and then it like looks faster, or using certain sound effects, or like speeding little things up here and there. So it's like even when you're getting finished animation, you're still chopping it up and like making things faster or slower, or repeating things, or stealing a mouth pose to put on here. It's like there's a lot of amalgamizing that happens throughout. And yeah, you do kind of wear a lot of hats. Like I'm a sounding board for the producer and director as they're reworking a scene. I'm a script supervisor when we're getting animation in, and like Damien doesn't have enough teeth there. I'm like I helped a lot with like I would like I have a bit of music experience, so I was kind of like the in between of my director and our composer. Of like my director would say like, I want something more sad, and I was like, well, you probably want something more minor key, like little things like that where you're kind of are wearing a lot of hats within a production. But the big thing is just telling a story and trying to make something that makes someone laugh or cry or angry or whatever emotion you're trying to elicit.
That's cool.
So this is a random question. Like I'm an old school guy, when it comes to animation and cartoons and stuff. So when I have a picture in my brain of what you do, I have this old school picture of like,
like the 3 layers of the thing or whatever.
So what does it look like now? Because before, you guys kind of all used to be next to each other and used to like hand it off, right?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So how does it? Yeah, how does the whole process work now?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for
you can just send it. You can be in fucking Guam on the beach.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which tragically, I mean, there is a lot of outsourcing and stuff like that, anyways. But it is like honestly, animation editing looks a lot like what you guys probably did for like your Troy thing or stuff like that. Like we edit in Premiere, and it's very like you have your visual timeline up top of like and I have like a track that's all the storyboards, and then I have a track for each of the new versions of animation we're getting. And then my audio is just, it's like anybody else. I just separate it in chunks. Like, here's my dialogue, here's my music, here's my sound effects. And then the stuff we're getting on Merry Little Batman, I believe the animators were using a mix of Harmony and After Effects. So they would send me like just a QuickTime file of like, here's this one shot. Like the way we would work back and forth is like, when we locked the animatic of the movie, I exported like every single individual shot of the film. Like it cuts to Damien, this is an export. It cuts to the cat, this is an export. It cuts to a Batman, this is an export. It's like whatever there is, like thousands of shots, I export each individual one. And we give that to the animators, and they're also receiving all the stuff that the rest of the crew did. They're getting the storyboards, the character designs, the background paintings, the color script, the asset list, like all of the things that we give them of like, here's the blue, like the job of an animatic editor really is like, all of this is temporary. It's all going to be washed away. Here is the blueprint for everybody else to do their job. So we give that to
Interesting.
animation, and then they start to give it back to us in each like individual piece. And they usually don't do it in one. They might do it on the show we're doing now, but on the movie they didn't, because it's like there's little things that can happen when we get like a new pass of something where it's like, oh, you guys missed this thing we had in the storyboards, or oh, we actually thought he was going to turn this way, not this way. And it's really expensive to do that at like the finished color stage. So it's like
I
at
was
every
gonna ask,
step.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna ask, how committed are you? Because like, so like, right, when you do live action,
Mhm.
you'll get all these various takes of a scene from this angle, from that angle, from this angle, from that
Right,
angle,
right.
and then you as the editor get to kind of pick the one that helps tell the story best.
And if you
Yeah.
don't like it, you can be like, you know what? I want it from this side. I
I
feel like
mean,
in anime, when you're just like, you know what? I wish we could shoot it. Okay, they're shooting this way, but like, let's do an over the shoulder. You can't just.
no,
Yeah,
that
like, are you getting art before you make the animatic? Are you getting art from different angles,
Oh,
or
absolutely. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
so basically, from even further back, so we have like a script, and then the director partitions it out into a certain amount of scenes, and then gives those each to a board artist, and they all like interpret it visually or work with the directors, kind of. Because our director Mike Roth is an animation legend. He was like a board artist on SpongeBob, like OG SpongeBob. So it's like
Dude, it's funny you
he's very
say that,
involved in stuff.
because there was the Merry Little Batman had a very SpongeBob feel to it.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
intentional. Me
yeah.
and Patrick Stump, I think we were the only two people on the crew that didn't come from like Adventure Time or regular show. So it's like it
Oh,
definitely has
right.
that kind of vibe. But like, so they partition it out to all these board artists to interpret visually, and then they'll send me like not even every shot, every pose is a JPEG. So if like there's a shot of me like picking up a water bottle, it's like, here's a pose of me talking to you. Here's a pose of me lifting it, drinking it, putting back on the table. That's like 5 poses. So it's like I'll get all the key poses, and then it's up to me to kind of decide, well, am I like slowly bringing it up, or am I doing a quick gulp and putting it away?
Hmm.
Fight scenes are exactly the same. So it's like I get all of this raw data, and then I choose the timing of these minute things, and then me and the director work together to kind of build that out. And as we do that, sometimes there are things where Mike's just like, I really feel like we should be seeing this in a wide, or I think this should be more dramatic. Can we like try it from like an overhead angle or something like that? And usually him or our creative producer Drace, or even like another board artist, they're in the Zoom or they're in my edit bay with like a Cintiq, which like you draw on and stuff, and they're
Hmm.
able to be like, got it, yeah, let's try this. Or we can send a revisionist and be like, oh, we want Batman to like squint, and it'll like look cooler, and they're like, got it, we can just mock that up. So we did that for like a year, where it's like we're still like nitpicking and trying different things. In fact, depending which, if you show like a Merry Little Batman thing I sent you, the penguin fight is a great example of this, because like that went through so many revisions. Like first it happened in a cave, then it happened in a sewer, then it happened in a
Right.
truck, and then it's like the motivation was this, and it's like, so all of these scenes, it's like they're boarded and boarded and boarded and boarded and boarded, and we have that luxury which you don't in live action, right? But there is a similar thing where when I've worked in live action, I think DPs hate me because I'm always like, I know it took a long time to set up this shot, but it doesn't work, so we're not going to use it. Sorry. Animation's kind of the same. In fact, I remember actually my first pitch on Harley, Brandon, one of the really talented storyboard artists, we were actually doing like the Harley plastique scene, and he had board, it was like twice as long, and I think like the producer or director mentioned like, oh, I think we'll lose this and this, and he had, it was kind of a throwaway line, but he said something of like, yeah, when I board stuff I kind of assume half of it's going to get cut. And I think
Hmm.
that's probably kind of similar for like you guys
Yeah.
in a way, where it's like, like even on set it's like it depends on which pieces work. The thing with
Yep.
live action is like, yeah, you can really like choose where stuff goes. Animation is kind of the same, but it's like the board artist is kind of dictating where shots happen. Sometimes I'll move stuff around, or I'm like, oh, this is a really cool shot, I want to use this as a reaction shot over here. But I'd say like weirdly in animation I have more control over like the audio edit than the video edit. Like I
Oh, interesting.
do definitely decide of like when I'm watching down a scene, and this Mike and I are both like cinephiles, so it's a lot of times it gets to very heady conversations of like, why would we cut to a zoom in on this? It's not that important, or why I think we should have like Alfred like listening here for a second before he talks. So it's like we'll have a lot of those like heady discussions, and then he'll give me his blessing to like, okay, I'll steal this shot, bring it over here, and then like we'll tell them to close the mouth or something. So there's a lot
Oh,
of different
cool.
ways it can happen. It's similar to live action in a way. It's like there's more and less creative freedom than live action in a lot of ways, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I mean, and you came in on season 3, so like we were talking to Doc Duhame, who was the stunt coordinator for Ray Donovan, and
Nice.
he came in later in the season, and we were talking about, so there was already an established tone for that show,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to kind of match it, right? So you came into Harlequin on season 3.
That's right.
So how does that affect your work as the editor? They've already established for 2 seasons, this is what this show looks like.
It's exactly like what you said, man. Because it
Yeah.
was like I had, and it really was a blessing because like Chuck, and James Atkinson and Annie DeBrock. I mean, there's been so many good editors on Harley, but they had already kind of done the groundwork of like establishing a tone. They even had kind of like a PDF that I was given on my first day of like, this is kind of like the vibe and the pacing. This is how we like to organize our assets. This is like our music library. That was actually a big thing because I really do like, I put a lot of pride into like my temp music passes. I wish we could, I mean, Patrick obviously crushed it on Merry Little Batman, but like, and I spent like a year making this like temp music track that no one will hear from Merry Little Batman. I'm so proud of it. But like a blessing on Harley Quinn is like, I'm a fan. So I'm like, oh, I already know what the love theme for Harley and Ivy is. I'll use that here. I know what like the fight music is for this type of fight. I'm going to use that here. I already know. And then like, the composer will come in and then he'll like sometimes he'll use those bits or he'll like change things up. Like if you watch Harley, there's obviously a lot of like percussive like drum kind of stuff, especially in the fights where it goes like like he'll go in and do a lot of that stuff. I'll edit together kind of other episodes he's done it in just to kind of get the feel of it, because it is like my big goal when I did it was like I want the radio play to sound like your eyes are closed and you're watching the show. And so it really was a thing of like, I had already seen the show. I watched it one more time before I started season 3, but it was kind of a thing of like, you don't want editing to generally feel noticeable. You want it to kind of like blend into the next thing. So my goal really was like somebody who's like binge watching season 2 rolls right into season 3 and they don't feel a difference. It feels like the show as a whole. Like you want it to have like the style and fun and rhythm. I think the big thing with Harley is like, it's a machine gun of jokes. So it's like, it's so fast, everyone's like cutting each other off. So it's like that was, and again, like comedy is my bread and butter. That was the thing I was ready to do for Harley. It was like doing the fight scenes with like these iconic characters I was a little more nervous about. But like, it's exactly like your buddy on Ray Donovan says. It's like you do your homework and then it's like you want to exist in this thing, as opposed to now where I'm on this like totally new show and I did the pilot and we really are building it from scratch, which is for sure a lot harder. Like those other great editors did a lot of the heavy lifting for me when starting season 3 of Harley.
That's cool.
Yeah, I feel like kind of if you watch the fights and you close your eyes, you could almost be watching the original Batman series from '64.
Oh my god,
that's kind of how it.
That's so nice to me. That's really cool.
To me how they were trying to. It was definitely a modern version of it, but I felt like they were trying to keep that tone of that when you mentioned the drums. To me, like the Batman series, to me, there wasn't a lot of music that you could remember in the scores, but you remember like the da da da, and then and in between was the
exactly, and it's very percussive, right? When there's like a hit or something,
that kept the pace of the fight for you.
Absolutely,
because they were more dancing through it. But
there's a choreography to it, and it's like it really is driven by sound effects. That's really nice of you to say, because I think that's what's true about. It's funny because it's like I see a lot of people complain on the internet of Batman of just like, oh, this is too kidsy, this is too cutesy. Like we got a lot of it for our flick, and I was like, Adam West like carried a giant bomb in a movie. Like, what do you mean it's too cutesy? It's like this was the origins of the Dark Knight. Like, I think there's
my favorite is Bane making fun of Tom Hardy's voice.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's like one of my favorite things on the show.
It's so funny. I love it.
It works so well. He crushes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in Merry Little Batman, it's like Arnold as Mr. Freeze.
That's exactly what we were going for, and that was really my favorite thing of Merry Little Batman. Is like we were all huge Batman fans on it, and there's so many eras of Batman that we tried to play homage to. I think the most popular one is like the nipple Batman suit and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of like the Arkham game. I don't think I've ever said this publicly. I'll give you guys like a scoop because I'm not sure how many people have caught this. So if you watch Merry Little Batman, there's a scene where Damien like hits a Christmas tree, falls down, and he's sliding on the ice, and there's like a random extra in there that goes like, it's a freaking bat. If you play the Arkham Knight games or Arkham Arkham Knight, I played Arkham the Arkham City, all that kind of stuff. If you play Arkham City, there's a scene like you go up to goons, and there's always like a guy that goes like, it's the freaking bat. So I wanted to use that actual clip and they wouldn't let us, so I recorded temp, an actor did it, and then we just like snuck it in.
Oh, that's awesome.
I remember there was an extra that was like, oh, I don't know if we can say freaking, and I was like, please let it slide, this is going to be so cool on Reddit.
Oh my god! And then even in there, they did the
That's a big, yeah, exactly. There's
yeah.
like homages to like every era, and like Harley does it too. I mean, I didn't get to edit it; the incredible Dave Corder did. But in season 3, honestly, my favorite episode is the 8th one, where they go into like the Batman animated series world within like Bruce Wayne's mind, and they actually went into like the old archives and pulled out like the actual like character sheets and BGs and stuff like that from the animated series in the 90s. I was so jealous I didn't get to cut that episode. But
Oh,
it's
that's
like
so cool.
all of these pay homage to like, I remember when we were recording the score, Patrick Stump, who's obviously had this like big crazy career, we were all kind of talking. We were like, I can't believe we're all a part of like the Batman saga in our own way. And he chimed in. He was like, "Oh, we're a little part of the Batman saga." But it's like it's kind of crazy. Like, I mean, Mask of Phantasm is still like my favorite animated movie of all time, and it's like to be
nice.
within that chain, no matter how small or weird or whatever, it's just amazing. It's such an honor.
So you mentioned that so Harley Quinn was your first gig, but also your first fight scene, and then you had mentioned a few times this afternoon that animating fight scenes was difficult. So why is that difficult? More difficult than say some other animated scene?
That's a good question. I think because it was like my first time doing an animated show, and overall, I think animation is very intuitive. Like, you don't need a lot of prior experience if you've done any kind of like previs, or I'm sure you guys have done stuff where you like board something beforehand. Like, I had done some of that in live action. That's basically animation editing. So it's like, I've done comedy editing my whole career. So like that was kind of my bread and butter. That was like, and it's great within just to deviate a bit in animation where it's like you're not married to whatever's on screen. You can take like 3 different takes of a vocal track and make like an anime, like whatever. You can really frankenbite like a line to make it perfect.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's like with animation fighting, it was kind of a thing of like I hadn't cut a lot of fight scenes in live action. So it was just kind of getting the rhythm down. And I think when I initially started on Harley, I had a tendency to overcut. Because with like the show, the comedy is so fast, it's a machine gun of jokes. You want to kind of have that rat-a-tat really fast. But with fight scenes, I kind of realized like as I was cutting it too fast, you couldn't really tell what was going on. It was like, wait, like you need to some time. You forget like you need some time to like process like what this thing is coming. What's something urgent? Who's this character that has the upper hand?
It's
Even
kinda
like
like a
keeping track of the
like a
180
real fight.
line, yeah, like a real fight. It really is like I think it's probably very similar to what like if you have a live action fight editor, it's probably a similar thing they would say. So for me, it was like kind of learning how to let something breathe a little bit because this is both for fights and for anything in animation. The thing I had to get used to is like the small stuff. Like one of the first notes I got is like I cut a scene where Harley was walking across the room. And the producer was like, "No human being can walk that fast." It was like bah, bah, bah. And I was like, you have to kind of picture in your head when you just have storyboards, like, okay, it'll take like this long for her to walk. It'll take this character this long to grab this thing. And in fight scenes, you kind of have to think of the same thing. It's like, yeah, these are like super beings. Yeah, they're really strong. But like realistically, what would this look like if you get the boards back in animation? And you kind of have to go into your mind's eye to kind of picture that timing. It's not an exact science, but I kind of learned to let things breathe a little bit because I especially found out on Merry Little Batman, you can always go back and condense things or open things up when you have animation to a certain extent. So it was always better to like have more than I needed. And especially like now when I watch fight scenes, I'm not so into like, apologies if anyone listening worked on these movies, like the Bourne kind of thing where it's like a cut every like half a second and my brain's a fried egg. I like more like those old Jackie Chan movies like Police Story and like I don't know, like Rumble in the Bronx and shit, where it's like it actually kind of all plays in the wide, or it's like when they're cutting, they're cutting for a reason. So I don't know, that might be too heady of an answer.
No, not at all. We talk about this stuff all the time, especially now the way action movies have kind of become. There's this sort of homogenized action, and I like the wides where you can actually see what's happening.
Yeah, because it makes me appreciate what you guys do more of just like, oh my god, like this is all happening right now. It's like whether it's a stunt person or an actor or whatever, I'm like, I'm just like, oh my god, human beings did this. And it's like when I see like a million, like 5 cuts to get to a punch, I'm like, okay, I use all those tricks. We all do, but it's
you brought up the Troy fight and
yeah, check this out, you guys. If you haven't seen it, I hope you guys link to it or whatever.
We talk about that in the devs episode too.
Going back to that, one of the things that Jared and I realized as we were breaking it down hit by hit and rewinding it and rewatching it, a lot of times when we first started, it was very hard because we're like, okay, so here's 2 hits. And then we go back and we're like, how is that 2 hits? And then we realize it's not 2 hits. It's the same hit they're showing twice. It's just in the next cut, they're going back just enough, because if you don't, the eye and the brain don't see and record the same things, or however the fuck you say that.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you don't go back further enough to show the start of it, even though you just want to show the impact in the next cut, it's going to be a weird edit. And what the eye is only going to see is the end of the reaction and not the impact.
100%. It's all space and perspective.
And we started realizing that we're like, is that a 2 hits, or is that just the editor having to go back to smooth the transition of the, zooming out to zooming in for the shot.
Right.
And there were so many times where it's like, okay, it's not 2 hits. It's just what the editor had to do so the eye would follow the transition of the fight and not get lost, and been like, wait, like when you when you jump sentences.
Oh, right.
And this is kind of like the fillers.
Or like when you're walking down steps and you think there's another step, but there's not another step. And like,
Yes.
Well, I imagine you also had a thing if you're like watching it frame by frame, which actually sounds, if you guys ever teach a class, you should, like, everyone should be forced to do that, because we as editors we learn to do that in school and it's so important. But like, I'll bet you had a thing where it's like you watch through it frame by frame and you're like, oh, there's like a sound effect here, but there's nothing quite hitting or whatever. It's like the amount of work you can do, because I think I mentioned that up top of like, it really does help to have like a full sound effects pass. Something interesting about animation, and I don't know if this is like an editor to editor or whatever, but I've met some editors that are under the practice of like, oh, you don't put in don't spend a lot of time with like sound effects editing or music editing. It's all going to get taken out. And they're not wrong, but it's like, even, especially me, Matt, and Oren are like big proponents of this. It's like, what sells comedy, what sells action, what sells horror, it's not even so much what's on screen. It's what you're hearing. It's the sound effects. It's the music. It's the things that really do dictate pace. And it's so important to get that right in the rough cut stage or in the animation stage, because or in the animatic stage, I should say, because the more you're doing that there, the less you have to like explain to executives like, this will work, and the better I think like a lot of your stuff comes out, because you've already tried to dictate a pace rather than like having a poor sound designer like try to do it to your kind of sloppy editing later. It's so important to like really like over sound design something. It's all going to get taken out, but it's all blueprints so that your sound designer knows, okay, they want a gunshot here, but I'm going to make a better gunshot here.
Right. Well, you're selling your product. You have, and it's important. But when you were in school for editing, this is actually a good segue back to your background, but like what we experienced doing the Troy fight and other shot for shots that we tried is re-engineer, like kind of reverse engineering a fight, like seeing the final cut and then trying to figure out like, okay, well, this take were all from the same shot, and then that take, and that take are all from the same shot, because we're trying to figure out how are we going to shoot this. Okay, well, these parts seem like they were from the same thing.
Oh yeah, that's really clever. I didn't even think you guys would have to do that. It's like you're not just getting each like shot piecemeal, because I imagine, did you guys have to like storyboard it to like kind of get it? Or?
We dropped it into the timeline, and every time they cut, we spliced it, and then we're like, okay, so there's 128 cuts in this 2 minute and 11-second fight.
Yeah,
it was so many. Like, so then we were trying to figure out which ones came from the same shots, which ones were inserts, which ones were specials, which ones were this, which ones were that, and
you want to get it in the same angle while you're there, so you're trying to figure out where the coverage was. That's really interesting. I've never heard of like a reverse thing of having to do that. That's really clever.
It's really complicated. And then, like you said, and then the sounds, and then trying to figure out, like, because we wanted to match it to the exact soundtrack without fucking with it.
Which was really cool to see, because I was curious, like, as you guys were watching it, if you were like, oh, I wish I had more of a beat here, or I'm not sure I would have put the reaction shot here.
100%. There were things about it that we didn't like, but we were just trying to do it exactly, warts and all, the way they did it.
And Jared and I, when we rehearsed the whole thing, we really did just break the fight down into like 8 parts at first. And like, if you watch it, it's beautiful. It's very beat oriented. And we didn't really realize it, but we were rehearsing it to those beats as well. Right. Even when we were doing it slow, you start off at like, at like a 4-1 time measure, and then you go up to like a 4-4, and you increase. But when that increases, and as you're watching it, that's why it was able to match the sound so much.
Right. Oh, I didn't even think of that, because you guys do that as well. It's like, it's really interesting to hear you guys have to do the reverse of what you usually do for work, of like, you do kind of the slow kind of like version, and then you like speed it up, get it to actual time. And then that's the thing that you do on the day. But even like for like what they did in Troy, I'm sure they shot a bunch of stuff in the fight that's not in the movie, and
I'm sure.
that like a lot of that probably may not have even been in order. It's like that they really did like change things. So it's really, that's a fascinating exercise to do it like the reverse, because like I remember in school,
after Jared spoke to him, I think it took them 4 weeks to shoot that fight.
Wow.
Yeah, Jared knows the guy who the sword master who worked on Troy.
Nice.
And he talked to him about it. I mean, we did it in 8 hours. They did it in, like 4 weeks, or like many. They probably it'd be crazy.
Well, they had to invent it, and then there's trucks, and there's all the other stuff that goes into it too. But like I remember,
let's get back to Batman.
Well, one
let's get back to Batman.
But I will say one quick side is like one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years is RRR. I've seen it like 6 times.
Oh yeah, Triple R, yeah,
incredible. But like SS Rajamouli did a Q&A, and he was like, it took like a full year to make that movie. Like the Natu scene alone, I think was like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like in my head, I'm like, no, when you get this and you forget, it's like, oh yeah, just to get this one shot in a fight, everything's so choreographed, no matter like all these other things you have. And he's a perfectionist, so to get what you guys do right, you really do have to spend like 2 weeks. And to my head, I'm like, no, you just do that in a day, half a day, right? Like it only takes up this much of a script. And it's like, no, that's where all of your bread and butter goes. That's where you use it.
And sadly, many filmmakers still think that, I mean, they're notorious for leaving the stunt stuff to the end of the day or doing it after lunch or whatever. And I'm like,
we'll just pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, no, thank you.
What was that movie with Jake Gyllenhaal? Ambulance?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Ambulance. Right? Yeah.
There was a drone shot in that, right? Where he brought in this drone racer, right? Like literally that's how we found the guy. He was like drone racing on YouTube or whatever. And he brought this guy in, and they were jumping a car, blowing up behind it, and the drone was going underneath it for the shot.
Whoa, I kind of remember that shot. Yeah,
that must have taken so much timing, so much planning, so many weeks of getting ready.
Oh yeah,
to actually do that on
I remember interviewing.
It's crazy.
I used to work at
precision that goes into doing that stuff.
Sorry, there was a bit of a delay. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. You were saying you remember.
Well, I was just going to say, I used to write for Moviemaker Magazine when I was in film school, and I did a little afterward just to go to free movies and shit. But like, I interviewed Edgar Wright about Baby Driver, and he said like that opening car, like the whole opening of that
I watched
movie,
that fucking last night, dude.
It's so good.
I watched it last night.
Took like 3 weeks to like choreograph and do all of these things, but there was still like, there's something really fascinating about this, actually, with that movie, is like there's a bit, I haven't watched it in a while, but there's a bit in like the flea, like it's whatever Chase Flea's involved in when he leaves in the car scene. There's a moment where like
this is a Halloween mask.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a moment in that, the big thing of Baby Driver, it's all so like tethered to music, right? But there was a moment where like they added something or they made something longer. So what they did is they added a bit where Ansel like rewinds on the iPod to make it sync up.
Oh yeah.
And that was something found in edit. And I thought that was fascinating because that's the kind of thing where it's like, even I'm sure on set they have like the song split up into all these fucking chunks to get this one moment, but still things are going to happen. You're going to discover something's cool. And then it's like, you still find tricks to like music edit something to make it longer. I'm sure that happens all the time in like fight scenes.
We know, Paul Williams, our friend Noah doubled Paul Williams in that big
the butcher scene,
in the warehouse shot. Yeah, our buddy Noah did the flatback.
Yeah,
wow.
But he said they didn't choreograph. It's so weird. Like a lot of that happened in post because he said they were just blasting that song while they were shooting, and nobody really knew why. They did their scene. They did what they were, told to do and whatnot, and did their thing. And then it was after he saw the movie, he was like, "Oh my god."
Wow,
that totally makes sense.
Because even like the reloads and stuff are synced to the song, so I figured it's like they have this one little section of the song and they're just doing that part over. That's fascinating to hear that it's like it's more.
I kind of feel like when they filmed Deadpool, the first one, and they did the final scene, and there was that all that slow motion. I'm like, he had this song in his fucking head before he did this.
Oh yeah, even the new one, it seemed like there were a bunch of.
I'm like, this music was
synced.
in his head before, because you know me. Every time we're going to write something or we do something, I'm like, hey, dude, here's music I have while I'm thinking about all this.
Needle
and I'm
drop.
like, here, here it is.
Totally.
I was like, this is what I thought about while I was coming up with this and whatever.
That's what's great about being an editor, because sometimes you have that in your head and then it becomes the actual song in the movie.
Oh, that's so awesome.
That's like my dream.
Oh, it's the best. I got like the Vandal.
I can't wait.
I was a big fan of the Vandals when I was in high school, and there's a scene in Merry Little Batman where it's like Damien's home alone and he's just doing fun shit. And like we kept trying all these different like Christmas songs. Like we even did like a Jackson 5 song at some point. And then I was like, like every punk band from the 80s has like a Christmas album. Bad Religion has one. NoFX has one. The Vandals have one. And so I brought in a bunch of them to the edit bay to like try it with Mike. And then I can't remember if he latched onto it or if I pitched it to him, but we landed on their cover Oi to the World. And it just worked so well. And it's like, but he has the best credit of, he found the Lil Jon song that's like the motorcycle chase in that movie.
Oh, right.
And that was another one. We tried like 9, 10 fucking songs. I had like all these ones that I wanted to do that didn't work. And it was just us going on YouTube of like, what's a Christmas song no one's used in a movie yet? And
A Fairy Tale from New York.
that's a good one. I don't think I've seen that one in a movie before.
Dude, it was so good. And you brought up Home Alone. So people have asked me since earlier the week when I watched the movie, like, so what I said, if you take Batman, combine it with Home Alone, that's like basically like this movie.
That was the elevator pitch, and it was that kind of the whole movie for a long time. But then as we were editing it, we found like, oh, we want to get to Gotham. We want to see like more of the grandiose like scope of the city. So it's like there used to be like half the movie was like in the house getting chased around by those goons, and it slowly got whittled down to it's like I think Damien's in Gotham by the first like 30 minutes or something. But I still, it's like there were so many like Home Alone hijinks we had. We even had like direct references that we took out. It's like I have in my head, it's like Spider-Verse where it's like I have all these multiverses of ways the movie could have turned out. I'm like 95% happy with the one that everybody saw, but it is like there every once in a while there's a little thing of like, oh, this bit was so funny. I wish we had kept that, you know.
So you mentioned let's dial it. Let's go rewind a little bit. You mentioned you used to write for Moviemaker Magazine, which I did know because I read an interview with you.
Oh, right on, yeah.
So what was the process? What took you down this path?
Oh, interesting. So,
from New Orleans and then
just to get into movie making. I was always, I can't remember a time in my life where I wasn't making something. Like I have all of my early memories are like forcing my brother to act out scenes from Brave Little Toaster or making my own comics or writing songs or whatever. So it's like and a lot of people in my mom's side of the family are musicians. So I just assumed, oh, I'm a musician. And I have like a very hard work ethic. So I spent like 4 years in high school training to get into the Berklee College of Music, and I got in. Wow. But even after that, I was like,
as opposed to having a harder work ethic and spending 5 years in high school.
Or 4 years. 4 years. Sorry, 4 years. I graduated at a normal time. 50% in my class, baby. Weird slip. 5 years in college, which is still not great, but I spent 4 years of high school trying to get into the Berklee, and I got in. But around that time, I started making movies with my friends, and I had this epiphany of like, oh, this is every art form. I'm making comic books to make storyboards. I'm directing the actors to get stuff. I'm making music. I'm making editing choices. And so then in college, I thought like, oh, well, I'm going to be a writer-director because that's what everybody does in film school. But I took like an editing class with Chris Roldan, and I realized like, oh.
So hold on, who's that?
Yeah. Oh, he's an editor. He's worked a lot with like Terry Gilliam. He's a really talented guy. I actually just saw him recently, but he teaches editing at the University of Texas at Austin.
Oh, cool.
My alma mater, Hook 'em Horns. And
Terry Gilliam. Oh my God.
Oh no, not Terry Gilliam. Sorry, I'm making a lot of slips. Terry Malick, which is even harder and crazier.
Yeah. I was gonna say Terry Gilliam.
No. So he's worked a lot with Terry Malick. He's done a ton of stuff with great filmmakers in Austin, and he's a great editor. But I took a class with him. And I actually remember he was speaking of the hard ass thing, because like I always tell this story about him where on the first day there were like 40 kids in the class, and he was like, look to your left, look to your right. Only one of these people is going to pass this class. It's probably not you. Of that number, only half of those people are going to go to Hollywood. Of that number, only half of them are going to make it in the industry. So if you're before you give up now, sure enough, the next class comes around. There's like 12 people left in the class, and he's like, all right, those people were never going to make it. Let's get to work.
He's right though.
He's right. And that was like, he became my favorite
teacher.
teacher
When we first started.
It's exactly. And it's like so much of film school, there is sadly a lot of like, because it is a very privileged thing to get to go to like a school like that. I'm very blessed that my parents let me go to film school, but it is like, I was like, if I'm getting this shot, I'm going to fucking use it. So I tried to like every class just to see, and like, I didn't love being on set, but I loved editing because that was the thing where it's like, the real storytelling happened. And no matter what script I wrote, no matter how I directed on set, I always found the most creative control I had was in the edit. Specifically when it came, like, I'm not a performer, but I love comedy. And I specifically found when I was editing, I could really dictate the time and get like that cadence and rhythm right. Like you can see from me talking, I'm terrible at talking in person because I flub and I make mistakes and I
think the opposite, dude. Yeah, not to throw you like a lot of praise, but I told Paul before we got on the air, like, because I watched your class this morning on the train on the way in, and I said, this is going to be awesome because that guy knows how to fucking teach.
Well, I will say that was very edited. I even like asked, like, can I edit that please so I can cut out all my shit? But it is the thing. That's where editing
good
you can
job.
really dictate timing and pacing and stuff. So when I got out of film school, I was like, I think I'm going to try just being an editor. Like everyone else was trying to do the writer-director thing, and I kind of had an epiphany of I was always writing so I could direct something, and I was always directing so I could edit something. And I was like, I'm just going to fucking chase the thing I really love doing. So that's kind of the TLDR of how I went from my humble beginnings of bossing my brother around in New Orleans to making movies.
So you didn't enjoy being on set, but so maybe you have experience with this or not, but editing during, it sounds like with animation that's what's happening, but in live action, right, like on television, they'll be editing as they're shooting.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then others, it's like wait till everything's done and we're gonna just
I think it's usually the former. I think it's usually
Sons of Anarchy. They were filming season 3 and airing season 3.
Oh
no,
wow.
at one point. No, I know that, but I'm talking about like
I'm just
even
saying like that's insane.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah. Like turnaround. My friends work on Abbott Elementary, and it's like sometimes I'll pop by, or like in season 2, I think, because Pat was.
I love that show, by the way.
Oh, it's great. Well, because my boss on Harley, Pat Schumacher, who created that, he's an EP on Abbott, so I got to do like a little he gave me a little tour around. And I got to visit the edit bay, and I saw them working on an episode, and like 3 weeks later, it was on air, and I was like, that's insane. Like they're shooting at this one, and they're editing this one while this one is airing. It's like that for pretty much everything I've done, though. I personally don't like being on set. One, it's really hot, and I actually do have I've been involved in one stunt in my career. I'll circle back to that story, but like I don't like being on set because it kind of colors it when you watch like people put something together, because then you watch them set up the shot, you watch the actors prepare, you watch all the stuff that goes into it, and then it kind of colors it a little bit when you, whether you want it to or not, when you go back to the edit of like, well, they worked really hard to get this shot, or like, oh, I see what the director was going for this. And it's like, I prefer to be as like cold as possible. Like I did for See You Next Christmas, Matt and Chrissy's movie. I did come to be like an extra, but also to just like kind of help out for kind of a complicated scene, make sure we didn't cross the line and stuff.
Right.
Besides that,
I saw you were in the credits.
Yeah, I pop up in there. The editor got to have a couple close-ups. I actually on set, I was like, if you want to for sure be in the movie, crowd around me in this shot because it's gonna get in. And I was right. But it was like a thing of like, I don't like being on set because it just kind of colors like how you work as an editor. And for me, I like to be as like removed as possible. I want to be. And I tell directors all the time, I'm like, don't edit your own stuff. You think you want to, but you don't. Because think about it. You've been in pre-production this whole time. This thing didn't go your way. You had these script changes, studio notes, whatever. Then you get to set. And it's like 12 to 14-hour days. This thing didn't quite work out. We didn't have this peak of the equipment, so we had to improvise. So you have all of these things that like didn't quite work. And now you're supposed to be in the edit and you're supposed to be objective. Like, it's just impossible. You want someone to come in to be and to just be like, here's all the puzzle pieces. I'm not quite sure how they fit together. I kind of have an idea, but I want to see if you have a better one. I think like that's like where I prefer to be, where it's like, it's a fully creative thing. And I get to sit in air conditioning all day because it's like 110 degrees.
But that's why you guys are so powerful when it comes to shaping the story.
Yeah. Because it's like we have that objective kind of scope of like, we're not looking at it from like the day to day of like, we could shut this scene and then we got this and then we think it's this. It's like you're looking at it from like, I'm sitting on my couch watching a movie. How is this playing? You get to have that kind of perspective.
So I was working on the show and they shot this whole scene and I felt like I knew exactly what was going on. And then I watched the show. I don't want to bring it up because I'm about to shit on it. I don't want to name the title. So we all have this story though. So then all of a sudden
Sesame Street,
the main crew splits up, right? Like the main actor goes, up a fucking whatever. And then they go through into this room. And then all of a sudden later on, like, they're about to get, the two not so main people are about to get the shit kicked out of him. And then all of a sudden the main actor comes fucking swinging in from the side of this building on what I thought was an unedited out harness.
Oh,
right?
Interesting.
So to the point of where I literally texted the fucking AD after I saw the episode. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck is this? And he's like, oh yeah, dude. He goes, that's not a harness. He goes, that's a window washing seat, like a wooden seat. Whoa. Right. And he swung in on that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, let me rewind it so I can see the scene where he rigs that up. And he goes, oh no, we didn't shoot that. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
Interesting.
So all of a sudden they literally were just like, yeah, screw it. We don't care.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden he just comes swinging in from the roof that you never saw him go to.
Yeah.
With this thing tied up to him like Die Hard that you never saw him tie up to.
Yeah.
It just makes
So
no
I
sense. It's
literally
just a
thought
Deus
he
Ex
was.
Machina of like this.
So
like,
I
coming
thought
in.
he was flying in, and they forgot to edit
Oh.
out his harness.
Oh, so he's like literally like sitting in this like thing like Tarzan. Oh my god.
Yes.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I mean, sometimes you catch stuff like that people didn't paint out, or they just didn't feel like they needed to, or whatever. But I'm curious. You mentioned about you mentioned don't edit. Let me do that job. Don't edit while you're shooting or whatever. I mean, in the director's mind or the writer's mind, even. Like, I'm curious because we've started writing some screenplays and we've been talking to other writers and stuff. Some of the advice we got was don't direct in the script that you're writing. And I'm wondering if you get screenplays where they're making editorial notes and you're like, we're just gonna, like, because a lot of screenplays will have some basic editorial notes, like cut this way to here,
cut to close up of this, cut to reaction on this,
cut to black, like a whip pan, like some basic stuff.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you take that. Do you disregard it, or do you take it with a grain of salt and then just move on? Or
That's a great question. I think when I generally interpret a scene, whether it's animation or live action, I do try to keep in mind like this was the intention of the writer, this was the intention of a director. Because as you start to, like for a short I did recently, as you start to look at the coverage, you kind of do get an idea of like, okay, the director's probably thinking we're going to be in the wide tracking thing for this, but then the actress walks into this on the close. That's probably where they want me to cut. It's like you get a lot of like kind of context clues from that, but it really is. This sounds super hippy dippy, but it's like I try to let the footage tell me how to edit more than the script. I know how that sounds. It's very like loosey goosey, but it is like whether it's animation or live action. I kind of like try to follow the footage, or even like in terms of like how the board artist boarded something, of just like what makes the most sense for this scene. And especially when you're doing like a 20-minute show like Harley, or an evening of storytelling like Merry Little Batman, you're not just editing one scene, right? It's like any change you make here is going to impact like what the movie looks like in 20 minutes or whatever. So it's like you have to kind of think of like the mind's eye of like, okay, how is this playing here in juxtaposition to this thing that happens later? And that's not something that the director or screenwriter always thinks of. So it's like it depends on the director. I think like sometimes I have an approach of like, I'll do a kitchen sink. I'll be like, here's everything you guys shot. Here's everything in the scene. I have some ideas how we can cut it down. I have some ideas how we can shuffle things around. But here's like the base level we're starting at so we can work together. Some directors like to work like that. Others, like my director right now, Mike Roth, he's kind of become a thing of like, I trust you. Edit the scene how you want to edit it. If there's stuff I miss or there's stuff I think needs to come back, we can always just bring it back. And that I kind of prefer that one where it's like a director just trusts you to kind of have your take at it to see like, how do you interpret this scene? And it's like the best directors I've worked with are the kind of people who hire people smarter than them and better than them at something. And Mike's really good at that. So it's like, it's the kind of thing where it's like, he can look at something and be like, this isn't quite what I had in my head, but this works. This doesn't work because of this thing that happens later, or this doesn't work because, we need to cut to this afterwards. So it's like, he still has the reins on it. We can always pull stuff back that we didn't want to use. We can invent stuff. But I get that kind of first edit pass, at least, of just like, this is in my head how it works. And you're not hiring me to click buttons. You're hiring me to have a perspective and have a voice and try to like make the best possible version of this. So I don't know. It's like, I do read the script and it's like, I want to, respect what's there and stuff, but I think they're not hiring me to like be a visual transcriber. They're hiring me to make the best possible version of this movie. So at a certain point, it's like, a lot of times that does work. Other times it's like, I'm not going to use this, and I usually have a reason for it. Like I'm always able, like I can defend, like there's a couple things we had to have in the movie for studio stuff, and 95% of their notes were great. There's only one that I regret, and to their credit, they now do too. But it's like, I can point to any cut in that movie and be like, this is why we cut to this at this time. This is why we cut to this thing. This is why we have this scene here and this scene here. It's like, I can defend all of those choices because I had that fight a million times. And the writer doesn't always, or the director doesn't always. There's a point where I know the footage better than either of those people. So you do have to consider that. But again, it's not an Andy Young movie. It's a director's name here movie. Or in TV, it's a writer's name here episode. So it's like, I always respect that for sure.
On the shows, as opposed, are you cross-boarding? Are you doing them all in order? Are you doing episodes out of order?
Oh, that's a great question. It kind of shifts around. It depends. Like the way it worked on Harley was like I had the odd number episodes, and then Dave Corder had the even number episodes. But there were a couple
most series
times
work that way with ADs and directors. They switch off.
Exactly, and it's the kind of thing. It makes sense for animation or television in general, because it's like 1 week the director can be working with this editor while this editor is building this episode, and then
Yeah,
you
you
kind of
basically
keep
go
it
right
that
into prep.
Right.
Exactly.
Right when you're off one episode, you start prepping your next.
I
But
think
are
that-
you?
Yeah.
But let's say you have all the even numbers. Are you
Mhm.
only working at one at a time?
No, it's like that's the thing. It's like it really
That's
does
what I
start to
meant,
stack
yeah.
up. Yeah, no, for sure. Like in fact,
Yeah.
on the show I'm working on now, we're starting to go into what's called post. So we've been in like pre-production or production where it's like we're just doing animatic. Post is when like animation starts coming in. So we're at a
Mm.
place now where I'm editing 10 and a 10 episode order of this show. And I've edited 8 animatics, I think, out of 10. And I'm kind of doing different things. Like, well, this one's locking, this one's getting studio notes while this one is getting built. But now it's
Right.
like, so I'm at any time I'm editing like 3 or 4 episodes at once, I think, where it's like I'm doing the studio nights here, I'm like starting to lock this one here, we're shipping this one here, we're starting to get animation this one here, we're building this one from scratch. It's like as you start going through a show, and a movie's a similar way. Like on Merry Little Batman, it would be a thing of like, as we're finishing this scene, we're just getting boards from this scene. And it's like I'm juggling that, or it's like I'll have a day where I'm working with Mike, and then it's like I'm just doing that. So it does kind of jump around. But then to go back to like the numbering thing, sometimes I'm sure this happens in live action too, but like the production order will get shifted. So it's like, for example, in Harley, I edited episode 4, even though that's an even numbered episode, because they moved like that in episode 5, like the order around for some reason of like we have these actors ready, or we have these assets ready, or
Right,
whatever.
you shoot the 5 and the 4 block because it's just everybody's
Everybody's ready, exactly. And it's like in animation, like for example, on the show I'm on right now, it's split into 3 teams of board artists. So it's like while this team of board artists is like prepping this pitch, this one is doing revisions while this one is doing from scratch, whatever. So it's like it's all like at every step, not just for editors, everyone is kind of staggered out that way. And it makes sense. It kind of keeps like the factory moving, and it keeps from having like kind of like a buildup of like, oh, we're like stuck on this episode, you know.
Now, when it comes to you know, when you edit and then when you finish it and it's ready to go out, right now, you guys, we're talking about all of this editing, and now it almost feels like that the director doesn't really give a fuck what he puts out, because he's like, I'll just edit another version and put out the director's cut. I feel like you don't have that option with animation, because you would basically have to just redo the whole fucking thing.
Yeah, that's why you never see like deleted scenes for animated movies, because there's not really anything.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, it's like, and it's funny, even live action editors, no one's really had that kind of take. Like the worst I've ever had, or not the worst, like the closest I've ever had to that is like I'll work on a commercial with someone, and like the client fucks with it so much that the director's like, hey, can you export me like this cut so I can keep it on my reel, or like, or because this joke worked better or whatever. And I'm usually like, yeah, I'll probably use that link as well. That's the closest I ever see that. Besides that, I don't see a lot of director cut stuff. It's a weird thing where it's like, it used to be just as a fan, like a cool, like, it's like, yeah, the studio didn't trust him at the time, but now we see this vision. But now it's like certain fucking Zack Snyder, where it's like, well, come on, you're Zack Snyder. You're telling me they didn't give you director's cut on the first pass? Like, what's the problem?
Well, that's the thing. Why is he really? That's what with all the Zacks, because the
you
director's
know what's going to
cuts-
happen. Why don't you just give the guy his fucking creative space and just let him make the director's cut for his first vision?
Well, and that's what's so weird to me of like even this last one he did, like Justice League I kind of get because there was other stuff tied in that, but like with this newest thing of like
Rebel Moon, they should have just given him the 7 hours.
What's you're hiring Zack Snyder to be Zack Snyder, you know?
And it's in 2 parts anyway. I mean, and it was so much. I'm not going to say that it made it good.
Yeah.
No, but the director's cuts were better.
So much better.
Sure.
So much better.
I have no doubt they are.
better.
And that's what the weird thing is to me. I feel like it's part of the marketing ploy at this point of like, oh yeah, like here's how Netflix screwed up, but here's the real one. It's like, well, why didn't you just put out the real one? I don't know.
Like,
I don't know
how
how
fight scenes where I'm like, there's
Yeah.
6 people tied up and you don't see any of them, and then all of a sudden they're free. And I was like, this is so chopped to shit.
Oh, I know.
I'm like, I can't, like, even when I'm watching it, I'm like, I just can't wait to see the Snyder cut.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I have, I don't know. I feel different ways about him, but it is just kind of the thing. It's like a marketing thing at this point.
I was going to say, you want to see the director's cut? That's another $9.99 rental for you on Amazon.com.
That's what I was going to say.
It's Netflix,
like,
so it's all free. So what
it's
was
Netflix for now, but everything's
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. This is a little off, but I'm like, so little of a lot of the stuff I've done exists physically. Like, I don't think there's a physical copy of Merry Little Batman out there. So it's like if Amazon is at some point just like, we don't want this anymore. It's just like it never happened, and that terrifies me. So it is like,
That's scary.
even with all the streaming stuff, like I think Harley you can still watch on Max or whatever, and I have a physical
Oh, yeah.
copy of it. Like they did put out a Blu-ray, but it is like, it scares me when I make something for streaming and it's like, there's a ton of stuff I did in live action that just doesn't exist anymore because it's like the streaming company doesn't exist anymore. And it's just
that's why every time the Emmys ask me, do I want my screeners as
as a link or a
CD,
thing,
a
yeah.
DVD,
the
or a
copies,
link, I'm like, no, I want the DVDs,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Even if it's lower res, I'm just like, I love physical media. I run like a free movie
Yep.
library in my yard. It's like, I like having a tangible thing I own that can't be changed, can't be edited.
Yep.
Can't be redone.
I stopped downloading movies. I started buying them again.
Same. I love having
Yeah.
like a tactile thing, especially like 4Ks just look so good. But yeah, somebody released Merry Little Batman, Amazon. I want to own it. I want to have like the DVD that I can taste.
Well,
There you go.
now I'm all about getting the steelbooks.
Oh hell yeah! And there's so many good. If anybody's in LA, I highly recommend Game Dude in North Hollywood. They always have great sales on steelbooks.
Nice.
They roll. They're the best.
So your first fight scene was Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn and Plastique.
That's
and
right.
then the last one was the Shark Brothers, right?
That was, well, no, I did do
no?
episode 9. There's a fight scene as well. These are my 2 favorite fight scenes in Harley Quinn that I edited. Because
So
I think,
No, I was gonna say, what did you learn from first to last?
Oh, that's a great question. So, like, I think for the first one, it was my first time doing it. It was kind of just doing it on impulse of like watching the show, or instinct, I should say. It was kind of doing it on instinct from watching the show and being like, okay, this is what a fight scene in animation kind of looks like. Let me kind of recreate that and kind of get that pacing right. And then with the shark one, I kind of took my own take to it. I was kind of less focused on like trying to make it a traditional Harley Quinn fight scene and more like what I thought like a fight scene should look like. And that one, the shark fight scene was one of the most complicated scenes I've ever edited because it got restaged a lot. Originally, we had, so in episode 7, King Shark, played by Ron Funches, has to fight his twin brother, or his brother, who's also played, at the time was also played by Ron Funches. So it was very confusing. And it's like these two sharks, kind of the whole joke was they looked identical. So you're trying to edit from storyboards and it's like, wait, did he just throw the punch? Where are we on the 180 line? It's like, it was very complicated to try to figure out. And then eventually they recast the voice actor who crushed it. And then they did like restaged a little bit so they look a little different. But it was still I
didn't even think of the 180.
Oh yeah.
Like I mean I know the 180 rule,
of course,
I
but
mean, you guys must have to think about it all the time when doing live action. It's the same for animation.
100%. I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
I'll get stuff. There's certain board artists where I'll get stuff and it's like, oh, this person doesn't watch movies, you know, because it's like, oh, we cost the 180 so much, it's spatially confusing, you know.
Every time we got confused in the Troy fight, they crossed the line.
Mm-hmm.
They crossed, like
twice literally, Steve's just like, he would shake his head and it'd be like, what? He's like, they crossed the fucking line, and I'm like, oh, that's why we couldn't figure it out.
And there's sometimes where it's
the
fine
shark,
Oh, but
the shark fight, it
was very complicated and difficult. It's like still one of the most difficult ones to do, but it's probably like one of the most proudest. 5 years. It's the proudest I am of any fight scene I've cut, I think, except for maybe there's some really good ones in Merry Little Batman. But it's like that was one where I felt more in my own as an editor. Because again, the thing with animation is like you're editing episode 1 and then you get to a certain place and then it's like, all right, that's done, that's locked, you don't touch that anymore. Now you move to the next thing. And especially because I didn't do color on Harley, it's like as I was getting better at animation editing, there were things where like I watched like the first episode and like, oh, I should have left more space here, I could have done that a little better. And it's like I think it was like the difference between those two was like I felt more comfortable not just with doing comedy for a show like this, but for editing an animated fight and having kind of my own voice, not just in like the visual cut, but also in the sound effects I was using, even like in the music, like in the temp music for the Plastique fight, I was using like the Harley Quinn kind of like like the fight scene to kind of make it feel like that. And then the King Shark one, I was like, I'm gonna try something else. I think I used like music from like Jaws 2 or something like that, where I was like, I wanted to feel kind of more like a Jaws thing. And then when like Jefferson hears this, he can use like Jefferson's the composer. He can do like a Harley Quinn thing if he wants, or maybe he can hear this and like try something that feels a little more like in the King Shark kind of world. Because again, Jefferson's a great composer and he does have themes for all these different characters and stuff. So I was kind of like, I don't think the Harley Quinn fight music works here. This is more of like a Harley fight. Like these are like big sharks like fighting each other. It feel a little more like deep horn epic. So it's like I kind of felt a little more comfortable on the shark fight to take some of my own like ideas to bring into it that weren't quite within just making it look like the Harley Quinn animated series. And I think it's still fits in that thing, but it was kind of more like having like a bit more of an authorial stamp on something as an editor with like the shark fight scene.
When you're designing, when the fight's being designed, who comes up with the moves? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what kind of a background do they have? Sometimes, obviously you see some of these amazing anime and you're like, okay, this guy's got a fight background. This guy just did a rolling Eminari, slipped a fucking jab,
Yeah.
threw a hook. You know what I mean? I was like, look at the hip movement. I'm like, there's a, do you need any kind of a fight background if you wanted to do fights for, and do you like, let's just say I have great visual things in my brain of what a cartoon fight could be, but I can't draw.
It's so
Could
funny
I
you mentioned
still
this.
design a fight for a cartoon?
It's just so funny to me that you say this, because so my director Mike Roth, who's the showrunner on my current show and directed Merry Little Batman, he has a wrestling background. He was like a wrestler in high school. He's from Pennsylvania. Like, he wrestled at Foxcatcher, so it's like he has like this like really long experience. So he actually did, like, he would tell me like, hey, I snuck in like this move here for like, I forget which one. It might have been like the penguin fight or something, but he would like sneak in like these wrestling moves. So I think it's like every board artist does. It's like every director. It's like they do bring in experience that they have. And I know, at least from like just being in the room peripherally while Mike and Drace were hiring board artists for the current show I'm working on, they would be like, oh, this person's really good at comedy scenes. This person's really good at dramatic scenes. This person's really good at fight scenes. And so I'll bet like a lot of these people, it's like they do, like, I know different people on our show like have all these different like experiences and interests and stuff. For example, like our character designer Ben Tong is like really good at breakdancing. So it's like, I'll bet there are board artists that do have like, Krav Maga or karate or like some form of fighting experience, and they bring that into when they're doing boards. And then others, maybe they're just big fans of like, like they watch a bunch of like Bruce Lee movies or something beforehand and they try. Because it's like, for me as an editor, it's like I can't help but have experiences in my life kind of find their way into things I work on. But it's like, I will kind of go back and research if I'm like cutting a certain type of fight of like, oh, I'm going to go rewatch like a bunch of these kind of movies to kind of get it in my head. And I'll bet like that's probably what a lot of these artists do is like, as they're boarding it out. But it's usually, I think every show is different, but the ones I've worked on, it's like sometimes it's like a director or like a very creatively involved producer, or even like a board artist just kind of dictating like, these are kind of the angles I'm thinking. And then it's like, when we're all in animation, we have this thing called the pitch, where it's basically the board artist, like, it used to be you'd point at like sticky notes on the wall. Now it's like we have a PDF and they like click through it and like do the voices and stuff. But all the other departments are sitting there watching it, and you're laughing through and stuff because it's like the first look at an episode. But every department's thinking of like, oh, is this at day or night? What's the lighting gonna look like on this? Oh, there's a lot of incidentals here. How many characters are we gonna have to design? Oh, they're using like a lot of props, and this is a car that gets crushed, so I have to design the car, normal car, crushed. We're all looking at different things that we're gonna have to do to. And as an editor, I'm doing the same thing, especially for fight scenes of like, I'll notice when it's like, sometimes the editor, like, it's really boarded well, they're thinking spatially and stuff, and other times it's like, a friend of mine, I won't say the show, but they work on like a very big procedural show, and it, like, the cameras will like do like a vomit pass kind of thing, where it's like, you're covering the wide, you're covering this shot, you're covering this shot, and then they'll just leave it to the editor to chop all up. Or you have a director that has a bit more of a vision and you're picking up these specific shots. The latter is how I think most of us prepare to work. But then it's like, if you're just getting that vomit pass, you have to figure out, okay, how do I make this dynamic, or what can I do to kind of bring these together? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Dude, it's already an hour and 7 minutes.
This is so fun. I could do this forever, man.
So I actually have a couple more questions that are actually like really quick.
Oh, sure. And I do have like a silly story of when I did a stunt that went wrong that I want to tell you.
Oh, yeah. No, we want to hear that.
Okay. I forgot my questions.
Oh,
Tell your story.
No, I want to. I want to.
No.
It's your
Wait,
podcast.
I have a question, and you have a question, and he has a story, and then we'll wrap it up on his story.
I think we can make that happen. It's a pretty fun one.
All right. So my question is, first, you mentioned time, years, this, that, whatever. How long does it take to make a 22-minute episode?
Wow. Okay. So I started Harley Quinn.
Soup to nuts.
Yeah. I started Harley Quinn in February of 2021. I'll bet they were already working on the episode for like 3 months. So I'm going to guess they probably started the episode in October of 2020. That's like my speculation of like getting boards. And they're a couple episodes, they're a couple seasons in. I don't know. Let's just say hypothetically they started in November of 2020. I start editing, and then they wait to hire me because it's like they need stuff for me to edit. So that's like 3 months right there. And then I think we locked episode 1. I'm going to guess like in May. It took me 3 months of editing, going back and forth on that one while we're doing other stuff. So that's 5 months right there. Then they probably started getting animation around November, because that's when I left, and that's when they're probably starting to get stuff. So that's another like 5 months or something like that. And then the show premiered in July.
When do the voices go into it?
That's a great question. So it's like
that's my question. Before you answer that, let me just say why.
I didn't mean to steal your question.
Yeah, you question interrupted me, but no, but it's good. It's good timeline because watching your class, I noticed you were using one of the Merry Little Batman scenes, and some of the early animatics had your makeshift voices. And then at one point you're like, okay, now we have the real actor voices in here, but it wasn't the final cut yet. It was still.
We're still
so
messing
at what
with
point? Yeah, at what point do you bring in the actors? Because your vision is always like when you see the behind the scenes videos that
they're in the booth doing the thing, and it's like
they're in ADR and doing their voices. So when do you bring in the voices?
That's a great question. So basically, like, and it's actually kind of funny going back to the Harley example. So on Harley, we got our voice actors immediately. Like my first day, they also recorded like Kaylee Cuoco and Jim Rash and maybe Diedrich, like someone else. So it's like I already had like their voices to work with. So on Harley, it was like we get
Jim Rash is Batman, right?
No, Diedrich Bader is Batman. Jim's
Batman.
the Riddler, and other incidentals. But yeah, so we had like voice actors immediately. So when I'm building the radio play, it's already, by the time I had a full radio play working with the showrunners, we already had Lake Bell, we already had all of our main voice actors, and it's like we didn't really change the script that much on that show. It was kind of like, it was very heavily scripted, if you can believe it. Like they'll let like someone like JB Smoove.
So do they just have a stack of sound effects that they just add in afterwards? Like, because obviously when they do voiceovers and you do voiceovers for a fight,
oh yeah, we have like a library. It's something we do.
So do you just have them doing the voice for the action, as intense as they can, and then you just add in those?
Yeah, it's like
for when it's a fight, because if you get it early before the animation,
what are they bored to?
They don't really have the mannerisms that they're going to need to do the voice over with, right?
Exactly. So what happens there is like we do have what's called a Walla library. And again, shout out to, I think Andy DeBrock probably did the most work on that from what I've heard. Chuck probably did too. Anyway, so we have like a Walla library, and it's like a bunch of Harley Quinn laughing, Harley Quinn crying, Harley Quinn punching, Harley Quinn having an orgasm, whatever. We have like all these different sounds that they've used from other episodes. And then it's like, if we need some, we can pull those in, because it's like, we already have them doing that. But then like sometimes as they're reading it, they don't, on Harley, we didn't have boards for them to look at, I don't think, by then, because what happened on Harley is I would make the radio play, and then the board artist would make their boards to my radio play. So they're kind of, if Harley makes like a ha or whatever that I do, they're kind of keeping that in mind. And if they do something bigger or smaller, I can always pull from the library. They get like small fights, big fights, whatever, that we can kind of build. Every once in a while, there's something that's a little more specific, and then they can always do that in pickups or even ADR. But for the most part, we can like, there's a lot of stuff in season 3 that you heard in season 1 and 2 of people fighting, because I just pulled exactly those sounds because they worked fine, and it's kind of innocuous. But so on Harley, like we did have all of our voice actors like immediately, and I think pretty much all of mine that we shipped, I would do temp voices sometimes. Like I would bring in my Clayface or bring in my King Shock. Like I would do like kind of my little shitty
Alan Tudyk is
version of
Clayface, right?
Yes, and he's Joker. So I always felt bad like trying to like do the King. And Ron Funches is like my favorite voice actor ever. He's the best. So it's like doing like my shitty Ron Funches go like that laughing.
It's funny. I was like, I couldn't figure it out, but I was like, one of these guys sounds like Tim Meadows.
Oh yeah. I think that's probably Ron Funches. He just has that like kind of giggly thing.
It was totally Ron.
Yeah, and like Tim Meadows is great too. I did cut something with Tim Meadows. He's fucking amazing. He's like an all-timer great SNL person. Anyways, that was Harley Quinn. On Merry Little Batman, we didn't get our cast until pretty deep in. Part of it was like they're doing deals and doing casting and stuff. The other part is we were rewriting the movie so much that it didn't make sense to bring in someone like Luke Wilson and do all this stuff when it's like it's just going to get taken out anyways, because we still haven't quite figured out what we want him to say. So we did have Jonas, who's our little Batman, and like he would kind of do a lot of stuff, and then it's like some stuff we would keep, other stuff it's like, oh, this line got changed, or he was like 6 or 7 at the time, so as he got older and his voice would change, we would have to re-record lines. It's really on the show, it's starting to change too. But it is the kind of thing that you have to like watch that kind of stuff. So it's like every show I've done has been different, where like on Harley Quinn we got stuff immediately. Merry Little Batman, we didn't get stuff till way late in the game. The show I'm doing now, Bat Family, it's a little more in tandem, but like most episodes I do the temp voices for all of the characters, and then like we'll slowly start to get in like all the other characters and stuff like that and replace them. I
want that audio, bro. I want that fucking audio.
I know. I don't know. I am really proud of like, I mean, you heard from my Harley Quinn impressions, like they're not amazing, but like it was, and this is kind of funny. Like, again, nobody told me
I love that she doesn't do the
me too. Like I
Harley
love that
Quinn.
she does.
I
her
think
own
it's
thing.
really great. I love the fact that she's kind of.
It's her own style.
I don't want to punch her in the face.
Yeah, it's the same with the Joker. I'm glad they didn't just fully do like a Mark Hamill. It's like even on like the Mary Lou Batman Joker and the Harley Quinn Joker are totally different, and I think both have like their cool like kind of charms to them, but they don't feel 100% something like you've seen before, which I love. But like
the same thing with DJ as Batman.
Yeah,
he has that great deep voice, but at the same time, he has that tone of where you're like, what's the punchline?
He's so good. I mean, speaking of the Veep thing, he's so good at playing comedy where he can play like that, like brutish detective, but he can also play that affable, like tortured Bruce Wayne. You know, he's but it is like a thing. Nobody told me when I started on, like they were like, oh yeah, just do like a temp voice, and most people they'll just like read the line. But I was like, oh, like we want to sell the cut. It always goes back to selling the cut. So I would do like my own shitty impression of a character, and they would be like even Pat told me later, he was like, yeah, this kind of reinvigorated the show for me that you were like so passionate about that you were like trying to really sell of like doing your own Poison Ivy impression or whatever. And it's like it's not great.
Now let's talk about you doing your own stunt.
Oh yeah, right. Yes. So in 2013, I was an intern at this company called Rafe Smith Entertainment in Austin, and they were doing a big football sports comedy movie. At the time, it was called Intramural. It's since tragically been relabeled Balls Out, but it's amazing. We had like everybody before they were famous. Kate McKinnon before she was big. Beck Bennett got SNL at our rap party. Like it's an incredible cast.
I doubled Beck Bennett, by the way, on SNL once.
Oh, no shit. I doubled DC Pearson in this movie. Beck's amazing. He's so cool. But so we're doing this football movie, and on the last day, we're picking up the again, they save fight scenes or action scenes for the last day. We're picking up these kind of like montage at the middle of the movie where it's like right before the big game. It's like both teams like taking out all these people. And so me and two of the other interns, shout out Larry Matavina and Nathaniel Halu, they roped us into being like an opposing team for the heroes where they have to like push us out of the way and like we're trying to get the ball and stuff. So it's one of the last things we shot for the movie. I'm trying to get the ball from Jake Lacey, who's famous now. And then at a certain point, Gabe Luna, who's also famous now, is supposed to kind of like push me out of the way. It's not quite in the movie you see, but on like the fourth or fifth take, there was a scene where like I'm like trying to get the ball from Jake, and either I was too early or too late, or he was too early or too late. But as I'm coming up, Gabe Luna like gets me in the gut, like strong arms me, and I just like it's one of the few times in my life literally the wind was knocked out of me. I went and they were like, and he was like, he's so nice, he was like, Andy, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm totally good, dude, that's awesome. But it gave me a lot of respect for what you guys do, because it is like with editing, timing is everything, and it gave me a lot of respect of like I was just an intern pulled into this thing trying to do, and to their credit, most of the movie has like this really talented football coordinator, really talented stunts creator. Everything was done to the level. This was like a last minute thing where it was like, throw the interns in there. It'll be fine.
Coming up to a future episode, actually, when you talk about that, we're going to have a guest coming on. We're going to talk about actually what goes into coordinating football.
I love that because it's fascinating. I shot BTS. We're going to have
the unit production manager from the Aaron Hernandez story on, and we're going to talk about what goes into coordinating all those football scenes.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool because it's like I shot BTS for like the whole movie, and it's like I was there when they were doing football training and like setting up the rigs and like the pullback thing and stuff. And even for an indie movie, it was like it was so impressive. But this was just like a last minute pick up this shot thing, and it was just like it really gave me a lot of respect for a stunt performer of like the timing. It really is a delicate dance that has to go through it. And anytime I see Gabe, it's just so cool to see like how much he's like his star has risen and stuff. But I always remember like you beat me up first before you beat up Arnold Schwarzenegger. You beat up.
That's so cool, man. Yo, this episode was awesome.
This was a great.
This was so fun. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's such a delight.
It was totally great.
I'm already like, we got to have him back.
Yeah, anytime, man. I love talking about fight scenes and shit. Yeah.
Season 2 on whatever you're working on at that time.
Yeah, wherever fine podcasts are sold. I've got a lot of good fight scenes in this upcoming show I'm doing, so there'll be more cool animated stuff to show, and I'm excited to keep listening, man. It's just this is so fun.
And where can people follow you, man?
I'm on all apps and devices as Andy Young Film, ANDYYOUNGFILM. You can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, Letterboxd I'm big on, and my website is andyyoungfilm.com for all my editing good stuff. And watch Harley on Max, watch Mary Lou Batman on Amazon Prime, and watch the show I'm working on right now also on Amazon Prime eventually.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Fights with Friends is brought to you by Breakfall Studios and Press Record Studios. Executive producers Stephen Koepfer, Paul Varacchi, and Thiago Benedetti. Produced by Matthew Kaplowitz. Associate producers Becca GT and Jared DeCrose. Our video editor is Matthew Kaplowitz. Original music by Aru Luster.